But I think we always got to remember, no matter how intense things get, is that we just have to have fun. Like little Johnny the snake, who just wanted to go out and hiss. And he said, Mom, I'm going to go out and hiss in the python pit.
So he went out in the python pit, started hissing around because he knew it was a great python, and he just started hissing around, having a jolly old time.
Like a python does, just have fun. So he went out in his pit, python pit, and started hissing around, hissing and having a great time. His mom heard all this hissing out in the pit.
What's all this noise out here? Saw Johnny hissing around in the python pit. Johnny said, Johnny, what are you doing?
He says, well, I'm a python, I'm learning how to hiss. I'm having a ball hissing. Mom said, you can't be hissing in my pit.
You got to go over to Mrs. Potts' pit and hiss in her pit. So here little Johnny did. A snake went over there just as happy as he could be. Started hissing around in Mrs. Potts' pit, having a jolly old time.
I just want to go out there and hiss around, have a jolly old time, and have some fun.
Mrs. Pot came out and said,
Johnny, what are you doing in my pit? I'm Mrs. Pot. You're a python. Get back in your own pit if you want to hiss. That's my pit. I'm Mrs. Pot.
you just can't be here. You got to go back to your own pit and hiss around, Johnny.
My mom told me, Mrs. Pot, to come over here and hiss in your pit. So here I am hissing. Says, I don't care what your mama said. You are in my pit. I'm Mrs. Pot, and you get back in your own pit and start hissing if you want to hiss.
Johnny went back to his house, started hissing around, having a jolly old time, just having a great old time when his mother came out and said, Johnny!
I thought I told you to get over to Mrs. Potts' pit. And he says, Mom, I went over to Mrs. Potts' pit and started hissing around. She told me I was a python to get out of her pit and go back in my own pit and hiss.
So I came back to my pit, Mama, and I started hissing around, having a jolly old time, and that's where I am.
She says, you mean to say that lady said that to you?
He said, well, yes, ma'am. She said, well, I'll be doggone.
Because I can remember when Mrs. Pot
Didn't have a pit to hiss in.